Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Week 7 discussion board. The issue, or rather the person of modern Christian history that I have chosen to do my presentation on is Martin Luther King Jr. Now, before we begin, it's important to remember that according to Course guidelines, God is comprehensively sovereign over the nations. And that is what we see him doing, practicing that sovereignty, when he galvanized his servants to address a wrong that was going on in the society, to make a change. It is popular in the modern times in some circles to depict Martin Luther King Jr. as a secular activist. In the article, I Just Want to Do God's Will, Teaching Martin Luther King Jr. as a Religious Leader, the author, David Newman, points out that on a famous monument erected in honor of Martin Luther King Jr., there is no mention of his faith in all of the inscriptions. In all of his speeches, there's no pointing out that they came from the Bible, many of the lines in them. However, according to our textbook, A History of Christianity in the United States and Canada by Mark A. Knoll, Martin Luther King Jr. was a Baptist minister, a minister who had devoted his life to sharing the gospel. These two ideologies cannot be reconciled. These two beliefs of him cannot be reconciled. Either he was a secular activist or he was a faith-filled man. However, the answer is very clear. He was a faith-filled man. In fact, he used biblical references in his speeches and implored people based on the principles of the Bible. In his I Have a Dream speech, possibly one of the greatest examples of his speech, written from the very heart, scribbled onto lines at the beginning of just before he spoke, he said these words: "And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope." Let me say that again. "And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope." These are not the words of a secular activist, but rather someone who's trying to ground his position in biblical principles. And that is exactly what he did. Now, Martin Luther himself follows a long line of Christian activists who sought to make a change in their society. They saw a wrong that they could not reconcile with their faith. One such example would be the Prohibitionists. Even though prohibition itself failed, the Prohibitionists believed that by removing the evils of drinking, drunkenness and the such, they would create a better society, a society in which God is honored even more. Another example of one that would work would be the abolitionists. Before the Civil War and even during, abolitionists were convinced that slavery was evil, a violation of their faith. They could not reconcile it. And so, they sought to put an end to it. It was a long and arduous battle, and a battle that ultimately resulted in a war and the loss of many lives. But in the end, slavery was ended. One such man could even be said to be Abraham Lincoln. Even though in his younger years, in his first term of president, he wasn't necessarily trying to honor the Lord in this issue of slavery. His second term, his commitment to the Lord, left only one answer: that he could not let slavery continue. And so, he pushed the Emancipation Proclamation through, which paved the way for the 13th Amendment. Martin Luther, his actions, his convictions, he stands shoulder to shoulder with all these men, Martin Luther King Jr. And his actions paved the way for an ending to the Jim Crow laws, an ending to segregation of restaurants and buses, an ending to a long-standing scar from the nation's past, and one that many people simply did not want to heal. Yeah, there was resistance. Yes, there was problems. But what perhaps most unique of all was his commitment to a peaceful movement, a movement in which he did not rely on violence, but rather living out the Christian principle. In conclusion, Martin Luther King Jr. was influenced by his faith. He saw a wrong that needed to be righted, and he sought to do it in a peaceful way. Thank you for watching.